Your vocals are making your mix sound amateur. Everybody can tell. You need to start mixing your vocals like a pro. Let's get into it. Yo, what's good, guys? My name is Inswain with Inswain Audio. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new, make sure to subscribe and stick around because I drop videos like this every single day. You're not going to want to miss out. Today, I'm going to show you a couple things you can do or to make sure that you're doing to get pro sounding vocals. This is going to separate you from all those amateur mixes. Let's get right into it. First thing, and probably the most important, stop making your EQ look like this. Now, don't mix with your eyes. Sometimes your EQ, what it looks like doesn't necessarily matter inherently, but if your EQ is always looking like this, you're probably doing the sweeping technique, right? Where you go like this and sweep around until you find a resonance or something that sounds unpleasant and you're removing it. This is not a bad technique. This is fine. But if you do this, you have to be careful because of a few things. When you're boosting those big cuts, a lot's going to sound bad. And you're going to find a lot of resonances, and those are natural. That's what's going to make the vocal feel alive and natural and allow it to breathe and not sound hollow and thin and weak. If you have this many cuts, you either have a bad recording or you're over EQing. You're removing too many frequencies. Sometimes your EQ is going to look crazy. That's okay. I'm not saying what it looks like matters inherently, but if you are just boosting and removing everything that sounds even slightly bad, you're going to have a hollow, thin, weak vocal. You have to understand that resonances are natural, and not everything that sounds bad when you boost it by 30 dBs needs to be taken out. You need to be able to decipher from what is something that's building up and we need to remove a little bit of versus something that is just part of the vocal. Now, what's the best way to do this? Listen first. When you hear, okay, there's something in the mid-range that I don't like, then you can boost to try to hone in on it. But don't just start boosting and try to find everything that's bad. Listen first. Say, okay, there's something around 200 to 500 I don't like, maybe-ish, then go and find it. That's also going to help you train your ears better. This is a much better way to EQ. Now, once again, doesn't matter what your EQ looks like inherently, and it doesn't matter if you sweep, that's fine. But if your EQ is looking like this, or you find yourself always doing so many cuts, it might be because of the sweeping technique. You're doing it backwards. You're sweeping to find problems when you should hear the problem and then use the sweeping technique to hone in on it. So I'm going to show you an example. Take a listen to this vocal. I'm going to solo it. Listen to the vocal before, and then I'll turn the EQ on, and you're going to hear how much weaker it gets when your EQ looks like this. So here's the vocal before.
All those lands turning into desert in between the poles. How can we forget?
Now when I turn the EQ on, it's going to sound unnatural and weak.
All those lands turning into desert in between the poles. How can we forget?
I'll play it in real time back and forth so you can hear it. I'll start with it off.
All those lands turning into desert in between the poles. How can we, for God's sake, still dare to deny?
So you can hear when the EQ is enabled, the vocal just feels like it just took a step back. It's in the background. It's washed out. You could use a million descriptive words to say how it doesn't sound as good as when the EQ is disabled. So this EQ is ruining your vocal. So be careful of that. All right, tip number 2 to get your vocals to sound like a pro is you probably need more compression. Professional vocals in a lot of genres, not all, not every song, not every vocal, it always changes, don't get me wrong, but a lot of times vocals could use more compression to take your mix from amateur to pro. Take a look at this. I'm going to play you this song. I'm going to let you hear it, and then I'm going to turn this compressor on, and I'm going to show you how much better the vocal sounds and up front and in your face with just one compressor where I didn't really do anything crazy to the settings, and see how much compression we get. So here it is with no compression.
All those lands turning into desert in between the poles. How can we, for God's sake, still dare to deny?
Now, when I engage the compression, listen to how more consistent in your face, there's character, it's leveled out, all of these good things. And this is just with one compressor that I just slapped on, and watch how much decibels we are getting in gain reduction.
All those lands turning into desert in between the poles. How can we, for God's sake, still dare to deny?
We're getting like 10 dBs or more of gain reduction. So all these tips and things you see of 3 decibels of gain reduction, 4 decibels of gain reduction, not always. Look at this, at one compressor, we're getting like 10 dBs of gain reduction. And if I were to mix this song fully, I would do more compressors, more compression. Some vocals have like 40 decibels of gain reduction from the tracking to the mixing to the master bus, the mastering. You don't need to be afraid of compression. Now, yes, you can overcompress a vocal. You can overcompress anything, don't get me wrong. But the main thing that I hear in terms of compression on amateur mixes is not enough. Don't be afraid to compress your vocal more. It's gonna give it character. It's gonna put it right in your face and give you that professional sound. All the songs we hear on the radio have tons of compression on the vocal. The next tip that's gonna take your vocal mix from amateur to pro is you gotta be careful with your reverbs. Too much reverb can make your vocal feel washed out and in the background. I hear this on amateur mixes all the time. I did it myself when I was starting out. I get it. Reverb sounds great. It's awesome. It's a cool effect, and it can help cover up your voice if you're mixing your own vocals and you're not the hugest fan of them. I get it. Trust me. But too much reverb is going to put your vocal in the background, and most of the time, that's not what we want. Sometimes it is. Sometimes a lot of reverb can work, but watch this. So I'm going to play you the vocal with nothing on it, and then I'm going to turn the reverb on halfway through and watch how much washed out and in the background it gets. Ready? Here it is, starting with the before.
All those lands turning into desert in between the poles. How can we, for God's sake, still dare to deny? But yet we can't stop the sport.
Now I'll solo it so you can really hear it. I'm going to start with it before.
All those lands turning into desert in between the poles. How can we, for God's sake, still dare to deny?
Notice how when I turn it off and the vocal's dry, it's right in your face. Then when I engage the reverb, it sounds like they're singing from across the gymnasium. And that's kind of the point of reverb, is it simulates reverberations in an environment. So it only makes sense. And I get it. This reverb sounds amazing. This was like I just changed the pre-delay and a couple things. I didn't really adjust this reverb at all. It sounds amazing. I love the sound of this reverb on this vocal. I might even use it if I were to mix the song. But with the incorrect settings or with too much, it's going to put your vocal way in the background. And a lot of times that's not what you want. Okay, now we're getting into the real nitty gritty. This tip here is a gem. Parallel compression is a great way to get a vocal to sound professional and to not lose your transients. Let me show you. Here I have a bus setup. On bus 3, I just have this Kive X-Tressor compressor doing some parallel compression. It's squashing the vocal a great amount, and I'm just blending it into taste with the dry signal so we can get some nice dynamic control and blend it in without touching the actual dry signal and hurting those transients. So I'll show you. I'll play with it before and after, starting with the before.
All those lands turning into desert in between the poles. How can we, for God's sake, still dare to deny?
It's subtle, but it's putting the vocal right in your face, giving it some character, and helping kind of solidify it in the mix. So let me do it with the vocals soloed, starting with the before.
All those lands turning into desert in between the poles. How can we, for God's sake, still dare to deny? But yet we can't stop to spoil.
So once again, it's subtle, but I set it up that way. You can do it more drastic if you want, but this is a great way to get the vocal just 1 or 2% more, cross the finish line, and give you that professional polished sound. All right, the next trick for mixing professional vocals actually doesn't have anything to do with the vocals. And that's the key takeaway, is that sometimes instead of adding things to the vocals, you can take away from other elements in your mix to make the vocals fit and to shine through, specifically EQ. So what I did here is I got an instrumental bus. It's a group for everything but the vocals, essentially. And on this, I have an EQ removing some frequencies where the vocal is prominent. And this is going to make space for the vocal, and it's going to make it feel like the vocal is cutting through more. Even though we're not processing the vocal, we're processing the instruments. So instead of adding these frequencies to the vocal, for example, I can take them away or reduce them from other things. Now, I just slapped this on the instrument group, so it's doing it to all instruments. Just for the sake of example, if you were actually mixing a song and you wanted to get more fine-tuned, you could target just the instruments that are in the way, or you could do it like this if they're all in the way, but this is just me being lazy for the sake of the video to show you an example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the before and the after, and listen to how when I engage it, the vocal is going to cut through, starting with the before.
All those lands turning into desert in between the poles. How can we, for God's sake, still dare to deny? But yet we can't stop to spoil our stinted seed.
So you can hear the vocal cut through a little more, it almost feel like the vocal was getting turned up, but it wasn't. It was not processing at all. It was turning these frequencies down on the instruments. All right, and the final tip is to reference mix. This is going to take your mixes, not even just vocals, everything to the next level. If you're mixing and you want to know, is my vocal professional? Is it bright enough? Is it dark enough? Is it compressed enough? Is it reverbed enough? Any question you would have, listen to your reference mix or mixes, and that will be your answer. You might have your mix dialed in, you think it's perfect, listen to a reference mix, and it's gonna sound way brighter, and you're gonna go, oh my God, my mix is super dull. Then you go back and listen to your mix, and you can't unhear it. You're just gonna hear everything that's wrong with your mix, and you'll be able to fix it instantly. But until you listen to that reference, you don't have that frame of reference, that perspective to know. And then once you do that, you can change your mix, or you can decide you like it your way. You don't have to copy it, but it'll give you the information to make an informed decision on if you want to or not. Whereas before you heard the reference mix, you weren't even aware of what it was lacking. This happens to me still. I'll get a mix going, I think it's good, I listen to the reference, and I'm like, oh, the vocals are more compressed than mine. And then I go back and listen to mine, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm lacking compression. Like, I thought it was compressed enough, but I was just focused on just my song. I was lost in the sauce, right? And then you hear things from outside perspective and you can compare it. And then I can decide, no, you know what? I'm good on the compression. Mine's less compressed than that, but I like that. Or you would say, it's less compressed. I didn't realize that, and I want more compression. So then you can make that informed decision. So I promise you guys, reference mixing will give you every answer you could ever need. If you have a technical question, like, what is a ratio? You could Google that. You can watch my channel. But if it's an artistic or stylistic thing, like, should I compress more? Should I change my ratio? Listen to a reference mix. It'll have every answer you ever need. So there you have it, guys. There's how to take your vocals from amateur to pro in just a few steps. Hope you got something from this. Let me know down in the comments. I'd appreciate it. Shout out to everybody that's been rocking with me. Please make sure to like and subscribe so we can keep growing and I can keep cranking out these videos. I got a ton of ideas. So I'll see y'all then, man. Inswain with Inswain Audio. I'll see y'all tomorrow, man. Peace.